Extraterrestrial literally means that it belongs to or comes from Earth's outer space. A weak, but suggestive, ET presence has been used on numerous occasions to explain the enigmas of Egyptian culture. And yet, we rarely think about the truly extraterrestrial elements that underpin the beliefs of the ancient Egyptians. Adoration and worship of a legacy that really came from the stars. The fault lies in the lack of answers. The pharaonic culture, which shone with unparalleled splendor among its contemporaries, is the civilization of antiquity that accumulated the most enigmas throughout its more than 3,000 years of history. The construction of the pyramids, their perfect astronomical orientation, or the incomprehensible texts that accompany many of them, point in the same direction: the stars. Some of the mysteries surrounding the ancient Egyptians are so entrenched in the scientific community that there are many who have proposed, perhaps in an adventurous way, the extraterrestrial answer. The ancient texts themselves tell us about visits and trips to the stars. The Book of the Celestial Cow tells us how the primeval gods arrived from heaven and, as we will see below, the pyramid texts describe in detail how the pharaoh could travel to the stars in the so-called ascension texts. But beyond the subjective interpretation that we want to give to these religious documents, the truth is that the traces of an extraterrestrial reality in pharaonic Egypt are more abundant than we could believe. They do not talk about small gray beings with almond-shaped eyes, but they show a reality that is equally mysterious and fantastic. The pyramid texts are the oldest religious texts of humanity. They first appear in the Pyramid of Pharaoh Unas at Saqqara, ca. 2350 BC. Its content is completely stellar. Throughout almost 230 formulas, the necessary steps are taken for the deceased pharaoh to ascend to heaven and unite with his ancestors, the star gods. Why did the ancient Egyptians believe that their gods came from the stars? What made them think that the pharaoh came from the same place and that he should rejoin his stellar nature? In the pyramid texts we can find the answers. There we are told about some mysterious, lightning bolts, that crossed the skies of Egypt. These rays, called bia, were made of a strange, terrifyingly hard mineral. Although the most unique thing about them was their magical powers. The Egyptians used the material that was sacred to them. Let's not forget that it had a high percentage of nickel, almost 10%, to make magical tools that they used in their rituals. Curiously, this iron was not used for practical purposes, as might be expected of it, due to its extreme hardness. The Egyptians understood that its power lay in the very essence of the material and, above all, in the magical place from which it came, the heaven of the gods. Virtually nothing remains of the ancient city of Heliopolis, the city of the sun. Some vestiges can be seen next to the Mataria area, in Cairo. There is no trace of the original temple, but all ancient texts speak of it as the place where the sacred Ben was housed, the primordial stone from which life emerged according to the Heliopolitan cosmogony. Texts such as the Shabaka stone preserved in the British Museum in London relate that before the universe existed, there was a space and time that not even memories could reach. In that deep darkness, the most absolute nothingness, the non-being, floated in an ocean of inert water. At a certain moment, from the waters of that unfathomable void, the primeval hill emerged, a black pyramidal hill. At its vertex emerged the solar god Atum, the first creator god, the same one who gave life to all the celestial gods who came to Earth at the beginning of time. According to the cosmogony of Heliopolis, the Ben stone was that primeval hill that served as support for the solar disk. In the city of Heliopolis itself, the Ben mansion was built, a place where the Heliopolitan priests jealously preserved the relic of this primeval hill, a symbol of the petrified creative semen of the god Atum. Once again, for many researchers this Ben stone would be nothing more than a meteorite, a stone that fell from the sky in prehistory and traumatically changed the way of believing and thinking of the ancient Egyptians. What was the shape and material of which this enigmatic primeval relic was made? We ignore it since we do not have any description or the stone itself. However, the descriptions in the text seem to indicate that it could have been a pyramid-shaped meteorite fragment, a sign from the gods. This strange pyramidal element, whose true meaning we can only guess, is also related to the pyramidion, the vertex that topped the pyramids, and also the obelisks, solar icons par excellence. Imhotep, wise architect and finally god in the 1st millennium BC, is believed to be the ideologue and creator of the pyramidal form. To his ingenuity we owe the construction of the first pyramid in history, that of Pharaoh Djoser on the Saqqara Plateau, in 2650 BC. He created that spectacular staircase to heaven that connected the deceased king with his stellar ancestors. If we review the positions he held during his lifetime, we will find one especially unique. Imhotep held the position of inspector of all that the sky brings, and it is said that his extraordinary knowledge in astronomy and all kinds of sciences came from a mysterious book of celestial origin. Once again we find this link with the extraterrestrial world in the Egyptian literature of the first dynasties, and that surely brings us closer to the world of meteorites. We find this relationship since the first dynasties. 15 kilometers south of Heliopolis, at a site known as Abu Ghurab, was the ancient solar temple complex of the kings of the 5th dynasty. Today there are only remains of two of them, that of Userkaf and that of Niuser. These were open structures in whose patios, behind an altar to sacrifice animals, a huge obelisk was erected in honor of the god Ra, the sun. The link between the celestial world and the funerary environment was maintained throughout the history of Egypt. If the pyramid texts gave the necessary formulas for the deceased king to return to the stars, the later funerary texts, intended to help all Egyptians of any social class on that journey to the world of Osiris, continued with the same ideas. The Book of Exit today, better known as the Book of the Dead, has a unique passage that describes the arrival of the mummy at the entrance to the tomb. There she receives from the priests the ritual of opening of the mouth, that is, a liturgy by which the deceased recovered his 5 senses to be able to begin the journey to the hereafter. A Sem priest stood before the mummy erected in front of the door of the tomb, topped by a pyramid, and gestured with a kind of black hoe. This strange tool, called setep, according to many Egyptologists, would be made of iron of meteoritic origin, further evidence of the presence of extraterrestrial elements in Egyptian religion and its extraordinary value in initiation rituals. On other occasions, the so-called psesh-kef, a tool shaped like a fishtail, was used for the same purpose. In addition to being used with mummies, this liturgy was also used to give life to any type of sacred animal and even temples or statues. In the past it was carried out by the same craftsman who made the statue without the need to use a priest as an intermediary. In the case of mummies, the ritual of opening the mouth was celebrated on 2 occasions. First, it was carried out immediately after completing the embalming process, in the embalmer's workshop. Later, the ritual was repeated, as we have seen, before the sarcophagus and mummy were placed inside the tomb for eternity. Once again we come across data that reinforces the idea that the ancient Egyptians related the origin of life and existence after death with the world outside our planet. A new example is found in the tomb of Tutankhamun, discovered in 1922 by the British archaeologist Howard Carter. In one of the boxes with jewels, a rich pectoral appeared, Carter 267d, JE 61884, whose pieces formed in cryptic writing the ceremonial enthronement name of the child pharaoh, Nebkepperora. The jewel, 14.9 centimeters high, is made of gold, silver, inlaid with lapis lazuli, carnallite, obsidian, different colored crystals and, most unique of all, a mysterious stone. In the center of the pectoral there is a scarab that supports Ra's solar boat on its journey through the sky. The insect is carved from a translucent greenish stone of unique nature. In reality, it is a unique mineral called desert stone, translucent chalcedony. It was first discovered in 1932 by the British cartographer Patrick A. Clayton. In addition to being the first man to cross the Great Sand Sea from east to west along the 27th parallel that opens throughout the Libyan desert of Egypt, upon his return he found this curious mineral. Its origin is surely related to some stellar object that collided with Earth about 28 or 29 million years ago. Most likely, the meteorite in question collided with such force against our planet that it sent melted embers of material into the air that, after cooling in a few seconds, fell back to the ground, generating this highly pure silicon monoxide. The passage of time and the scourge of wind erosion did the rest. A truly incredible crystalline surface in which the greenish tones stand out especially, as is the case of the stone that forms the scarab on Tutankhamun's small pectoral. The Egyptians, they knew the nature of this extraterrestrial stone. Its symbolic force was used in the Jewel of the Child Pharaoh to reinforce the idea of the solar and lunar magic that the pectoral exhales. But, unfortunately, its use has only reached us in this jewel of pharaonic art. In the last 2 decades, modern expeditions to the Libyan desert have found new stone remains of extraterrestrial origin from that explosion. If we search the internet for videos of extraterrestrial beings in ancient Egypt, we will easily come across this example. Its visits are counted in the millions. The image is spectacular, almost shocking. The story tells how near Lahun, south of the El Fayum oasis, a secret expedition discovered inside a pyramid the remains of what in ufological terms is known as an extraterrestrial biological entity. The mystery of this grayish body lies in the fact that it appeared in Tutankhamun's tomb in 1922. It is one of the 2 mummified fetuses, children of the child pharaoh. The DNA has left no doubt, discovered by Howard Carter in this grave. Enigma solved. In the 90s, people wanted to see a classic alien in a Saqqara tomb. She had it all: a disproportionate head, large almond-shaped black eyes and grayish skin. What else was needed to demonstrate the presence of beings from another planet in pharaonic Egypt? But beyond these frauds or misunderstandings, perhaps the most important thing of all is that the Egyptians knew him. Perhaps they could not understand what, but their certainty in the origin of these extraterrestrial objects was clear. And yet, although it may seem paradoxical, the ancient Egyptians did have contact with that distant and fantastic world, its imprint being something absolutely clear and evident in their culture, because yes, Egypt was extraterrestrial. Thanks you for watching the video. Remember, you can help me subscribing to my channel to know more about Alien My Estuary's smiley face.